With the confession of accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, in the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial, thrust into the spotlight in the trial within a trial over the past few days. This morning, we speak to a legal analyst and ask, what are the legal prescripts of a valid confession? Legal analyst Alton Hart joins us now. I just turned you into a rock star there, Alton. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time. I know that you've been watching this issue very closely. You've got the testimony of Magistrate Vivian Fillion that has made massive headlines over the country over the past few days. Certainly around the recording of a confession by one of the accused, and then the issue of what actually constitutes a valid confession. So before we even get into what happens if the accused was in fact forced to confess under duress, let's talk about the legal prescripts of what needs to be ticked. What are the boxes that need to be ticked for a confession to be considered valid?
Obviously, if you look at what needs to be there for a confession to be valid, you go to Section 217 of the Criminal Procedure Act. It says it must be made freely and voluntarily and without undue influence or force, if one can use the word loosely. So that is more or less what they need to check. That's what the magistrate needs to pertinently put to the accused person. And obviously, if the accused person is not conversant in English, because normally most of these things, the court language is English. If it's not conversant, it must be interpreted into his mother tongue, and it must be interpreted verbatim, not give an interpretation. You must verbatim interpret what the magistrate who's taking the confession down or who's responsible for doing the confession says to the accused person.
Yeah, and then what then do we do when you've got someone like the accused saying that, well, they made a confession under duress? I mean, firstly, do we have a big problem of this happening within the criminal justice system? Maybe that's where we should start.
No, indeed. I mean, I've been involved in cases down in the Western Cape where my clients was charged with triple murders, and they were sitting with broken ribs, being tortured, interrogated, kept away from the court system, kept away from hospitals, kept away from being washing themselves. So in a form, put them in a room for a night, like switch on the light, keep music playing there. So the next day, the person is worn down. They just say, I might die here, so I'm going to now rather speak. So this is not something, it's not something special that we're seeing happening here. And there is certain techniques that some of these people use to interrogate accused persons that you can't detect from the naked eye to say, I can see this person was beaten up. Because if I use a plastic bag and I suffocate over your head, it's very difficult for me as a layman to see that you've been exposed or been to put under that type of sort of half torture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. So, you know, where you say that we've got these cases that do happen and they are somewhat of a challenge within the criminal justice system, I mean, is there enough being done then to protect those that are going to stand trial and perhaps in some cases, as you say, have in some cases been forced to confess under duress?
No, we do have legislation that's in place. The legislation makes proper provision that you can actually sort of deal with these issues. But the actual reality on the ground is, if I arrest you, your family doesn't know where you are. We don't even keep you at a proper police station. We keep you in some room somewhere. Where will people actually find out where you're being kept? And you could see that Ngomezulu, he asked these questions. Did the magistrate actually find out where was the accused kept before he was brought to Alberton, and those type of things? And I thought he was going to venture into asking for the cell registers so that one can actually see, was the person actually in a police cell or was he kept somewhere else, because he was arrested on the 16th and the confession was only taken down on the 24th. So there's an 8-day lapse. And I thought he would zoom into those type of things to actually prove. But I don't know what's still going to happen. But that's the type of things that you need to put before court to try and prove that this confession was not done freely and voluntarily.
Yeah, I mean, where you've got Advocate Thulani Ngomezulu essentially saying that Ntanzi had signed the pro forma, and you've got, of course, Magistrate Vivian Fillion saying that, well, there was an initial there was a signature, regardless of whether or not it was a cross or not, there was a signature on this pro forma document. I mean, if that's the case, and we're still then ending up in court with a trial within a trial, speaking about the validity of a document, then maybe we need to be doing, I don't know, a cleanup system of the magistrates that look at these confessions. I mean, what then needs to be done? Because you're talking about what legislation is in place and what actually happens on the ground. So who do we hold accountable? How is a magistrate, like, for instance, perhaps a Vivian Cronje, held accountable if necessary?
I mean, if you look at it, and when Advocate Ngomezulu was asking Ms. Cronje about these things, she got very emotional. She raised even her voice to the advocate. And as an officer of the court, she should know better. Answer the question, get over it, explain what you need to explain, and say, this is what happened. And I mean, what also is funny for me is that you have a person there that is in a position where you say, I will assist you. Now, the person tells you, I haven't had a bath for 8 days. That's violation of your basic human rights. Should a magistrate then not say, let me stop this confession here, because maybe something untoward happened. The second thing that hops out, she asked for the people that brought this guy to the confession. Where's your ID cards? They disappear. Why don't you stop the confession and say, I'm not going to proceed with this confession because I don't know, because he has already red lights. As a magistrate, she's legally trained. She's got years, like close to 30 years of experience.
Yeah.
And this doesn't sort of half raise red flags to you. And then she say, it wasn't of concern to me. It should be of concern to you. As a magistrate, you are the last stop between a person's right being violated and actually a person getting incarcerated by information or evidence that was unlawfully obtained.